Ah, the sound of vetoes on a Sunday morning with your pancakes and bacon on the griddle. Governor Katie Hobbs now at 63 vetoes and counting, smashing the single session record held by the state's last Democratic governor, Janet Napolitano. It's no coincidence that divided government, Democratic governor, Republican legislature, defines both of their eras. But Governor Hobbs could face her first veto override vote this week. The lesson? You don't mess with homemade tamales. We'll explain. Our political insider stepping in now. Chad Campbell, co-founder of Lumen Strategies and a former Democratic leader of the State House. And Marcus Dell'Artino, Republican consultant at First Strategic Public Affairs. Welcome back to Square Off to you both. First off, are there any conflicts you need to disclose about the topics we're going to discuss today?
No, I don't make tamales.
Don't make tamales.
Thank God.
On that note, let's start with the governor. We knew from day one of this administration there were going to be a lot of vetoes, and Katie Hobbs would probably wear out the veto stamp that Janet Napolitano gave her. But for the first time, it appears Hobbs has gone too far, of all things. She's vetoed a bill that allows for the sale of homemade prepared food like tamales, and a lot of people do this as kind of a side hustle. An override motion is set for this week. Chad, will the overwhelming majority of Democrats who voted for the bill support an override?
I doubt it. I think that they will probably start working with the governor's office, trying to find another approach to this issue. You know, this is a complicated bill. I know we kind of laugh about it, the homemade tamale thing, but there are some health implications to this. There was some, I think, valid concerns about some of the language in the bill. So I think the governor's team is already working on trying to find a way to make this happen, address some of the concerns underlying why she vetoed it, and I think those conversations are happening with Democratic lawmakers already.
Republicans seem keen on going for an override vote. Do you think they'll go ahead anyways?
I think they got a lot of vote counting to do this weekend. And traditionally, I've been part of these, so let me tell you what traditionally happens, because it's not pretty. Everybody talks a great game right up front, right? And then the governor gets involved and says, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you, the member of my own party, did not go forward with that veto override, because you've got a bunch of bills coming up to my desk, and I'd hate to veto those as well. And so this melts away rather quickly within its own party. I think Democrats will end up doing an about face and back in the government.
And not to mention, there's still the budget to be negotiated, and that's pretty big leverage that the ninth floor has over some of these lawmakers, both Democrats and Republicans for that matter.
But this does seem to be a pretty popular bill. Even Will Humble, former public health director, said, yeah, it's a good bill. He's okay with it.
Again, I think the governor has to find a solution to the issue, and I think they're working on that. I don't think it can be ignored, but I think that will be the outcome, is finding an alternative way to address the same issue.
You agree?
I think it's going to be largely the same bill with a couple tweaks in it. We'll probably, I don't know if there's a vehicle bill out there still. I haven't gotten to that point of looking that up, or my interest is not that great, to be frank. But there could be a vehicle bill out there. We could do, if it were big enough, we could do a later introduction of bills. I think there's a solution coming.
Okay, interesting. Let's turn to the state budget now, and I found this story fascinating. It's the only thing lawmakers have to do, pass a budget by July 1st, the only thing. A report in the Arizona Agenda last week described the strategy to win votes, a, quote, do-it-yourself budget. With a projected $2 billion surplus, each lawmaker would have a say over how to spend $20 million. Is this a real idea being discussed?
I mean, yes.
Yes.
Sorry, we have to admit it. Yes. It's an interesting, it's working now. And the parties are in the room and they're having fruitful discussions. Long-term, does the strategy play out? I'm a little bit doubtful. And here's why. Because there's a lot of projects and a lot of items out there that are bigger than $2 million, bigger than $20 million, bigger than $100 million. Roads, water, power, education, prisons, public safety. All these things cost way more than $20 million. And what legislator is going to hook their train to that wagon, or wagon to that, whatever.
We get it.
Yeah. So
tamale card, actually.
Those issues, yeah, tamale card, good. But those issues need to be worked out as well.
Is this, the challenge with a budget is always getting the votes.
Yes.
Is this one of the better ways to get votes that you've come across in your years?
Well, what I would say is this. You know, let's keep in mind, you have an entirely new set of leadership teams down there. Not just the new governor, but all four caucuses have new leaders. You have half the members are new for the most part down there. It's a very brand new set of elected officials. So, I wouldn't recommend this strategy oftentimes, but this may be the only way to get a budget done this year. I think the question is, I think to your point kind of, Marcus, is like, you can figure out the big bucket items, which I think is what the governor and the leadership is doing right now. But then when you get to actually counting the votes, like you talked about a minute ago, and you have those individual requests, that's where things are going to get sticky. I think it can be done, it's a different approach, but it can't be repeated. You can't do this next year. You can't do this moving forward because, to your point, there's some big picture items we need to address here, be it water, be it whatever, and I don't think this is the way to do it long term. But it may be the way to do it this year.
But you got 90 people with $2 million, I think more in the Senate, actually. Yep. Let's say this goes through. We see in the past special interests, lobbyists, no offense. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I got two here. So it's fair. But, hey, can I get 500 grand for this or 800 grand for that? I mean, you could just nickel and dime this thing to death.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing you need to watch out for is, what does Chad want that I am no way am I going to vote for that budget if it's, I want a shrimp farm in Yuma. And Chad says, look, I'm a fiscal conservative. There's no way I'm going to vote for a budget that's got a shrimp farm in Yuma. So, you're going to have some fall off along the road here.
Agreed. That's the big problem is one person gets what they want and then maybe you lose another vote over here. But I will say this too, like, this happens anyways to some degree, especially when you have a chamber that is this closely divided. People have their individual asks from both parties, right, and they go to their leadership, they go to the ninth floor, whatever it may be, to request those things be included in the budget, and that's how you get their votes. So it's not all that different. It's just much more out in the open, I think. I think that's the...
Well, that's refreshing, and they are talking, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's celebrate the fact that they're all in the room and they're having discussion.
Let's celebrate. Okay, good. Next topic. Not much celebrating here. Republican State Senator Wendy Rogers. Last week, she persuaded a municipal judge in Flagstaff to issue a restraining order against an Arizona Capital Times reporter who was trying to confirm that Rogers actually lives in her northern Arizona district. If you've been around the Capitol, you know this is kind of an open secret, or at least an open question about whether she actually lives in Flagstaff. Rogers claimed she was being harassed by the reporter, who simply rang the bell at Rogers, Tempe, and Chandler homes, tried to speak to neighbors. In other words, doing reporter things. Ever heard of an elected official seeking a restraining order against a reporter?
No, but I think we'll see more of them. But,
hold that thought. Yes, and that's one of the concerns here.
I think that the residential requirements have been an issue in Arizona forever. And you go back to Bob Stump, and I mean Congressman Bob Stump, not legislator Bob Stump. And there was always a question of whether he lived in his district. We could do Shooter, you could do Mitchell, Tom Gordon, who lived in Peach Springs. I mean, the list goes on. And you can drive a semi-truck through it. And so I think this largely is not a very fruitful sort of discussion until the courts sort of make a stronger ruling here. That being said, filing restraining orders sort of sets up a future where, no offense, but your friends in the press are in a little bit of trouble if these restraining orders keep going.
This is a concern, yeah.
Yeah, it's a horrible precedent if you're a person who supports, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, some of the underpinnings of how our government works and how you can hold government accountable, right? And I think to your point, it's weird to me that Senator Rogers went to this extreme anyways, because the residency requirements are so lax here. It would be tough to get her out of office, do whatever, if she even were exposed to be not living in her district full time. But there's also, beyond just that question, though, there's another fundamental question here, though, that I think people forget is it's also about money.
Right.
So if she lives in Maricopa County, where we think she does, but she says she represents Flagstaff area, and she's getting a per diem based on that Flagstaff area, she's getting tens of thousands of dollars more than she should from the taxpayers. That's a problem right there. Putting aside whether or not she lives where she's supposed to live, that's a fiscal issue. And so that's the question too. But I think that, I'm hoping that this gets appealed, because this cannot stand. I'm shocked by the judge's
If it gets appealed, it will likely go away. And to your point, Wendy Rogers is collecting $20,000 in per diems with a northern Arizona home versus about $3,000 if she were claimed her residence was here. Got to end it there. Chad Campbell, Marcus Dell'Artino, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Sounds good.